It is finally happening. Finally happening. I am going to be playing End of Empire for the first time. I am extremely excited about this. I have wanted to play this game for a long time. Finally got around to getting into it, really. After I completed some of my Napoleonic battles, ended up taking kind of a deep dive into sort of the 18th century. And I realized, hey, I've had End of Empire sitting here, prepped, ready to go, and I've never played it. And so we got out the big table because it is a 2-map game. You can see it's an old Compass game. Came out a while ago. Not a lot of coverage on it, really. I've heard that there was some troublesome elements to the rules. There's some lack of clarity, and some other stuff about it. There was errata out of the box, unfortunately, with counters that were misprinted. That eventually Compass actually reprinted. I believe if you buy this game from Compass now, that comes with the errata counters in the box. At least mine did. And the errata sheet. And some bonus scenarios are available online as well that cover sort of Queen Anne's War and some of the smaller stuff that happens in this period. But as you can see, the game takes place 1744 to 1782. That's going to cover basically Queen Anne's War all the way through the end of the American Revolution. Primarily, this game is an American Revolution game. And let's see if I can find the counter tray that's got all of that stuff. That's the main scenario in here. All of this is American Revolution here. Americans, British. There's some more in another tray I've got over there. But the game also comes with units and pieces for the Queen Anne's War, like I said, the French and Indian War, and some other scenarios as well. There's a Caribbean, Spanish stuff happening. Speaking of the Spanish, you can see the map here. We'll go over the map, but this is Louisiana down here. Gulf of Mexico. Florida, here's Havana, Cuba. Florida comes in this way. Here is St. Augustine, oldest city in North America, or in the U.S., I guess. And we go up the coast, Savannah, Georgia, Charleston, all the way into the interior. You can see the red line separate the states. Here's Virginia, here's North Carolina. This is an operational scale game. It's about 20 miles to the hex. Units are regiments, brigades, sometimes battalions, and you've got leaders as well. Here's what some of the leaders look like. I really like the counter in this game. This is Braddock, and of course we are playing, we're going to be playing the French and Indian War scenario. I have wanted an operational levels French and Indian War game that's hex and counter, and this is really the only one that exists as far as I'm aware. So we're going to be playing that. It is 46, possibly 46 turns. I believe the normal game ends on turn 36 or possibly turn 40. But you can see all the reinforcements here that are going to be coming in. Lots of British, as you would expect. Not very many French. First turn here. Each turn is going to be a couple of months. We've got 2 summer turns, a fall turn, 2 winter turns, a spring turn, and so forth. And the turn track covers based on which one you're playing. The top row is American Revolution. We're playing French and Indian War on the bottom. It's going to take us from 1755 all the way to possibly 1762. The charts are on the map. The map, if you look closely, there is a texture to the wilderness here, so it's not just matte green. I wish they had used a different font than red on the green. It's kind of hard to read, but you've got cultivated land, you've got wilderness, mountains. I'll explain everything that's going on here, but as I go up the map, you can see here's New Jersey, Pennsylvania. There's a lot of iconography on the map. Ports, supply sources. Not sure what the guys mean. I think that might be militia for when they come into play. You've got provincial units. That's a provincial unit there. More British here this is in Vermont. Let's see. This fort is in Saratoga, so it's upstate New York right there. So that's a fort there. We've got this unit here. Sorry, I'm not doing the best job of showing it. I apologize for the glare. I need some light in here to show you all this. But basically, the map goes all the way up. And of course, we've got Cape Breton Island, the fort at Louisbourg here. There's a sizable French garrison at this location. You can see. And a fortress. Units, like I said, battalions, regiments, sometimes brigades. First number is combat strength. Second number is ambush strength. This game uses a fairly novel combat system where units can potentially ambush one another if they're in a wilderness space. And of course, most of the map is wilderness, as you can see. So ambush, very keen possibility, very appropriate for this theater of warfare in North America. And then we've got movement points. Most units have 20 movement points. That may seem like a lot, but again, we're talking about 2-month turns. and wilderness costs 5 movement points to move through, so it's not too crazy. It does look like a lot though. There are some rules around how you activate units, leaders, and all of that stuff. It's all based on an initiative system, which is pretty interesting as well. What's going to happen is on a turn, and I can explain this more, I'll show you a turn sort of in as we go, but you'll roll for your units to see if they can actually activate, and if they can't, they don't do anything. And so there's going to be one stack at a time. You're going to roll, see if they activate. If they don't, they stay there for the turn and don't do anything. And so it's going to be a little bit... you can mitigate that luck with leaders. So leaders have an initiative rating here that makes it easier to activate them. And we're going to do the entire French and Indian War here. So this is the starting positions. I'm very excited to play this. The rules are actually not that simple, but not that simple, not that difficult. They're actually fairly simple rules. They're just very wordy. And I am going to be using not the rules that came in the box. There was a brand new set of rules that the community has worked with Compass and the designer on getting approved as sort of the up-to-date living rules. They're called the Minuteman rules. You can find them at Board Game Geek. I believe you can find them at Consim World as well. They just released the final version a couple months ago this year, and that's part of the reason why I'm playing this now. So if you go online, I'll leave a link in the description down below so you can go check those out. But basically, they're an overhaul of the rules that clarify a lot of the things, that use a lot of the designers' comments from the Consim World forums to clarify situations that came up, and are essentially the definitive rule set for this game. So we're going to be using those. I never played this game without those rules, and so if you see me say something or do something that doesn't seem to make sense based on your understanding of having played this before, it's probably because the rules are different. The game, very important for supply during winter turns. Supply in this game is traced mostly via river or these cultivated spaces, eventually back to the ocean. There is a naval abstraction in the game. You can see that these are militia, but we've got fleets here for the French and the British. I believe these are the fleet tokens. And we've got Native Americans as well that can ally. Well, these are going to be French only, I believe these. Yeah, so Native American units, every turn there's going to be a chance that you will get them on your side. You can see that they have strong ambush capability. This plus means that they're allowed to ambush on the offensive. And so the Mohawk, they're obviously British, but here we have the Onondaga. They can be French or British allied. We'll get into all of that. I'll probably take you through a single turn near the start of the game to show you how that's going to work. And again, I apologize for the glare. If I move this way, you might be able to see, but we've got the big table out. We are going to be playing the entirety of the French and Indian War. Let's take a look at the sort of starting positions for what's going on here, some general thoughts about how we're going to execute these campaigns, how each side is going to win, and then we'll just jump right into gameplay. All right, so what are we doing here? What's the goal? What's the objective? How are we going about this particular war? Well, if you know anything about French and Indian War history, it was a battle over North America who had control and rights to sort of the interior of North America. The French obviously controlling the St. Lawrence Seaway from the Canadian Maritimes all the way down to Detroit, actually, through the Great Lakes. And down here is going to be Fort Duquesne as well. So this game's victory conditions are basically for the British, and I put red markers on the map. I don't know if you can see this underneath some of these units here. These represent the major supply and Canadian entry hexes that the British need to capture and hold by the end of turn 32, all of them with an in-supply unit in order to win. So Montreal, Quebec. That's Quebec. This is Trois-Rivières, Three Rivers. So these three, the British need to control with an in-supply unit, plus they need to control, the other one that they need to control is it Fort Cumberland? No, it is, there's another one around here. Hold on, where is it? Actually, it might just be those three. Sorry, the reason I can't find it is because the British start in control of it. They British also need to control, what is this? Grand Pré, this town here. This, which is a French supply source if the French control it. This obviously, I think, being sort of the expulsion of the Acadians, I think is what is being modeled here. Sorry for the focus. So yeah, so the British need to control this hex and these three hexes here by the end of turn 32. And if they can do that, that's one of their victory conditions they need to win. Turn 32, by the way, incidentally, is, I guess, the historical end of the French and Indian War. Now, the other way that the other thing that the British need to do, because we're playing the full scenario here, not just the historical scenario. So normally it would end at turn 32, but it's going to go all the way to turn 46 potentially. In addition to holding all of those for every turn after turn 32, the British also need to come down here and burn the Cherokee village in this hex here. They're not allowed to do this until turn 29. So sometime between the winter of 1759, 1760 and the end of the scenario, they need to come and do that. So that will be of key importance to them starting after turn 29. So essentially what we're trying to do as the British is take control of these major hexes up here by turn 29, come down here, burn the village. That's the reason sort of the South map exists in this full scenario, is this village, and also in New Orleans down here. The French have a garrison, a couple battalions down here. Yeah, and this is an artillery regiment as well down here in New Orleans. Now, there's no real way the British are going to make it down here during this scenario, so I'm going to treat these guys as potential reinforcements. I'm not going to have them march. I'm probably going to use naval movement potentially to come around and ship them in this way. But the French do need to be aware that those guys exist down there. There is one fleet apiece. Certain turns, these are going to come in. I believe starting on turn 6, they'll get a chance for the fleets to come in. There's an abstract fleet combat, like I already mentioned. And so that's what the British are trying to do. If the British don't achieve that, then the French win the game. And so the French are going to want to just basically hold the British off as best they can. They might make some incursions. They might make some attacks. Some of these forts are going to be very important for supply purposes for the French, coming all the way down the lakes here. And there are fortifications here that the French have. And then obviously Louisburg is the big one. That if the British could take that as they did historically, that opens up the St. Lawrence Seaway, because I believe you're not allowed to have artillery in place. I don't think there's actually any artillery here. Yeah, the supply rules are pretty interesting, because it all involves like having artillery. Artillery blocks supply lines basically, but not having artillery doesn't block supply lines. Which is kind of interesting, so you can trace through non-artillery forces. There's a lot of, I'll explain all that stuff as we go. So that's the victory condition. So what am I thinking? What are the operational goals here early? Well, the first is these Native Americans. Every turn we're going to roll on this chart here. So as you can see from this chart, we're going to get Native Americans coming in potentially for each side based on what they control. So for the French, it's going to be if they control specific hexes, which are listed here, then they can roll for these particular tribes, and these particular tribes might come in at these locations. For the British, they're going to need to control some specific areas, and when they do that, they're going to get a certain number of points, and then every turn they're going to roll in that column to see if these particular Native Americans come in on their side. So this is going to augment the forces. What's important about Native Americans is that they can offensively ambush, as I've already mentioned, as you can see. And some of them, no, it looks like they all have just regular movement. Some units have movement, like light infantry movement. They don't need to roll for activation. They can just automatically move every turn. It doesn't look like these Native Americans do. But offensive ambush is going to be really important. And I suspect that for the French, it's going to be even more important as the British try and push out into these wilderness areas and take control of these spaces. So we're going to want to get as many of those allies as we possibly can. The French are not going to want to lose that much ground. Conversely, the British are going to want to take some of those hexes. And some of those key hexes here, Quebec, Montreal, Fort Frontenac, Detroit, Fort Pitt, Fort Duquesne, Niagara. So the British are going to want to stretch, and they're going to want to come this way. Oswego is another big one for the British that they're going to want to take. Fort Oswego here. This is Fort Frontenac here. So a lot of the historical approaches that the British took against the French in sort of the lower Great Lakes region, they're going to want to do that. And that's going to help augment their forces. The British, obviously, as time goes along, are going to get a lot more reinforcements. So the French are going to have to pick and choose their battles quite wisely. And that's what I'm really excited for in this game, is sort of the operational maneuver and the operational planning that goes into it. I am playing both sides, so obviously I will know a little bit of what's going to happen. But, all the victory conditions are fairly well laid out on the map. So we're going to get started on turn 1 here. And the first thing we do, here's the sequence of play. Let me show you that. The first thing we would do is do some naval things. In this first turn, we don't do that. Then there are some reinforcements that come on. Then we do Indian recruitment. And then there's replacements, which I'll get into. The British and the French, I believe, are allowed to use, the French allowed to use their provincial troops. They can basically take hits on their provincial troops to augment their main regulars, and the British are able to combine units Then there's an amphibious invasion embarkation. So this is where, you know, for example, something like the assault on Louisburg, you would have a bunch of units in a port, for example, and you would declare where they're going. And so, you know, you would know that there's going to be an amphibious assault this turn. And then there's militia placement. So there's some rules about how militia come into play. Here are all the militia here. Likely you're only going to need to use these if the French make incursions into sort of the British colonies, the cultivated spaces in yellow here. Incidentally, the French do have cultivated spaces as well down around sort of their cities. It's a slightly different color. Not sure if you can tell. It's harder to move through this if it's hostile to you. And then after that, we're going to go through and do our activations with all of our units. We're going to switch sides, have that happen, and then there's some units that have a scheduled withdrawal. Sometimes there's special reinforcements, and then the militia in spring and fall go home, and they come off the map and get put back on in the following season. And then there might be winter attrition if we're in winter, but we are starting in summer. And so I'm going to get my reinforcements here. Let's take a look at what the French get. The French get a fairly hefty first turn reinforcement. A bunch of integrated artillery regiments coming over from France, and Dieskau, who is a leader. He's got one rank, meaning he is the highest ranking French leader in North America. The higher this number is in the center here, the lower ranking they are. So Dieskau is going to take control. And then 5 is his initiative rating, which means to activate his stack, you need to roll that or lower. It also has effects on avoiding battle and interception and so forth. So he's a really good leader, actually. And he'll be quite an upgrade to Governor Vaudreuil over here, who, as we know, was very corrupt and was sort of the main reason the French ended up losing this war. All right, so we're going to place these. I believe they come in to a port if they don't have a hex. And yeah, we'll figure out where we're going to place them and get underway. All right, ultimately, the reinforcement decision was thus. I've landed one of these regiments, the Guienne Regiment here at Louisburg, just to prevent the British from getting any ideas. There are a bunch of battalions here in Louisburg. They had 5 combat strength, and with this one unit landing here, I've effectively doubled that. He's also a 2-step unit. These other guys are 1-step units. So we're just going to leave them there in the fort at Louisburg for now. The rest I brought into Montreal down here, which I believe I'm allowed to do. Is it a port? Ooh, it is not a port. They've got to come in at Quebec. Okay, we'll fix that real fast. Here they are. Okay, they're going to come in at Quebec. I don't believe they're allowed to come down the river. So let's fix that up real quick. It's interesting that Montreal is not a port. You would think it would be. Most French and Indian war games let you sail down the St. Lawrence, but apparently not in this one. Okay, so they're going to sail into Quebec here. Quebec also has a couple battalions. These battalions are good. They appear to be light units. They have plus before their ambush factor, so they're able to effectively fight in the wilderness with ambush combat before regular combat. So we're just going to drop them there in Quebec. That is a port, and then they can move. I believe they can move via river. So in this game, rivers are kind of like highways, and they're the least costly movement terrain to move through as you go, because you don't want to be marching through the woods. You want to take the river as far as you can go. So we'll come in there with Quebec, and I believe as we look at the sequence of play, got our reinforcements. Now we have to do Indian recruitment. So I'll roll that up and show you who got what. All right, so the ultimate outcome of all the rolling is that the French ended up getting the Seneca and the Abenaki up here, and every other Native American tribe is going to go back to the box and be checked again next turn. It's really hard for the British to get allies until they start to take some of these key hexes. So Montreal, Fort Duquesne. Fort Duquesne is the big one. They're going to want to really take that as early as possible. And Fort Duquesne obviously is down here. Now, like I mentioned, this is set up for Braddock's disastrous march through the wilderness to Fort Duquesne, where he was ambushed and killed by the French. And there's a reason why it looks like that here. We've got one French battalion who's got it's a light infantry who's got ambush. But then we've got all of these French allied Native Americans who've got crazy ambush factors. So do the British actually want to engage in that, knowing that their ambush is waiting for them? Well, I mean, in order to play it historically, I feel like we should, right? They're going to be marching from Fort Cumberland here, and they can make it there basically in one turn. They have got some provincials. This is George Washington himself, it looks like. The 1st Virginia, yep, that's them right there. They're not bad. And then you've got some British regulars here. So you've got the 48th or the 46th, the 44th. Those are Irish. And I'm not sure Indco. Anyways, so do we actually want to take Braddock and send him into the jaws of defeat here? I don't know. Well, I mean, it would be cool to do it because it happened historically, but the British, knowing that that's coming, probably wouldn't do that. On the other hand, General Shirley over here, who's not the best leader of all time, he does have a stack of regulars, especially this this regiment here, who's got 8 strength. Now it's boxed. It means it's on the attack. It's halved. So he's got 8 strength points here, which is actually pretty good. He might try and march here to take Fort Frontenac potentially, but I think Oswego is the one that he's got his eyes on, and they can get there pretty easily via this river. And here's Fort Stanwix as well. So on we go. Okay, so the British go first. And they have done a couple of their activations. So first they rolled on Shirley's stack. Now Shirley is a general. We're trying to activate his stack. We need to roll a 3 or less in order to activate him. We did. We rolled a 2. So Shirley, he started here in Schenectady. He came up here through Fort William Henry, came up this river and parked. I think it took him 19 movement points to get to Fort Ticonderoga, Fort Carillon right here. His thinking is that if the British can take control of this very thinly defended Fort Crown Point, or Fort St. Frederick here, they can establish sort of a blocking position down the river from the French that are going to be coming from off this direction from Montreal. He also threatened Montreal from that position as well, which is something that he's going to want to do. Takes the fort, be able to hold Lake Champlain, going to be an important route down into the British area. We also rolled an activation on this New York provincial unit here, and he actually succeeded at his activation. If a unit has no leader, you're trying to roll a 2 or less, and he rolled a 2. He was based down here at this supply area. He moved up through Schenectady, down the Mohawk River, through Lake Oneida, and parked himself right here at Fort Oswego. Now, I'm hoping I can get another activation with him again next turn to build a fort there. Right now he's got you can trace this river back to his supply areas all the way down here. He's not really in too much danger. I guess the Seneca here could try and come over and ambush him, but they would need to pass an activation test, and that's unlikely. There's also a French light infantry battalion located up here at Fort Frontenac. And so we're just kind of laying the groundwork for more British units to come in. We're going to take this Oswego position. That's going to help us on our Indian rolls. We're going to try and take Crown Point here, and that will give the British a nice advantageous position if I zoom out against any incursions that the French are going to try and make this direction. They would not be able to come down the river without a severe fight. They'd have to come down this way into this area, and that's a long march. And so I feel like the British did well. I have to figure out what I'm going to do with Braddock. I'm tempted to do the historical hacking through the woods to get here and see how the ambush goes, just so I can show you the ambush rules. So yeah, let's do it. Let's see if we can get Braddock to activate. So Braddock is a 3. I need a 3 or less on the die roll. Let's see what happens. I rolled a 5. Braddock's not going anywhere. He is holding fast at Cumberland and the Potomac, and yeah, he's just gonna, I guess, continue to try and prepare that expedition. So that's the British turn. As you can see, it went super quickly. I also could have deployed some of these militia if I had wanted to in their states or their colonies. I'm going to save them for if the French decide to come down, because these militia can be placed in reaction to French incursions into the cultivated areas here. So we finished the British turn in no time flat, and now we're going to go to the French turn. I'm going to take all of their activities. We're going to want to get the main French force moving down this direction to potentially fight against Shirley, relieve this fort here from its danger, potentially try and cut off the New York provincials here at Oswego. And yeah, I mean, I know it's 46 turns and it looks like a lot, but these turns are going to go really quick because we have very low unit density on the map, and a lot of the time the units are not doing anything because you're rolling for an initiative check that's fairly unlikely to succeed. All right, 2 minutes later, the French turn is over. We tried to activate the Abenaki. It was a fail. We tried to activate the Seneca to harass this unit. That was a fail. We're going to leave the French in the positions they're in, specifically here as well, because this could be a huge ambush possibility if they're in danger, and we want to hold that position. We want to keep that position. We did move Dieskau down from Quebec. Now, we left a couple of regular regiments here, one-step regiments here in Quebec, since it is an important city, and we took the light infantry. And we took the light infantry. As you can see here, we actually have two battalions of light infantry. The reason I did that is because I want to be able to ambush if we get into combat. He had enough movement points to come down the St. Lawrence, break off here near Montreal, come down Lake Champlain, and join the units, the battalion here at Crown Point in the fort. And we're going to get probably next turn, depending on what Shirley does, our first sort of combat. Now, the French here have a pretty sizable force. Shirley is not working with a ton. On defense, he's going to be pretty strong, and so they may be staring at each other for a while. But Shirley's got to be careful because his ambush strength with his units here is only 1 on each of these, and I believe the French have 4. So it'd be a 1-to-1 ambush. Not the worst in the world, but also could go badly. But he's going to be tough to attack because he's got 8 strength points here, specifically with that battalion or that regiment. So we're going to have the old historic French and Indian War standoff here around Lake Champlain between these two lake forts, and whoever can carve an advantage out there is going to have access to the soft underbelly that's going on here. But that first turn took me all of 2 minutes, and so I suspect that we will be able to play through this scenario, despite it being 46 turns, really quickly. Okay, so turn 4, we're in fall of 1755. And Braddock here finally got an activation with his stack. We've also deployed the Maryland militia here down the Potomac just to be safe. But I think we're going to go ahead and do the attack, or the attempted attack, on Fort Duquesne, Fort Pitt here, and we'll see how the ambush possibly take place. Braddock underneath him, he's standing on a fort, that's Fort Cumberland. I did also deploy the Virginia militia to this hex, and the reason I did that is because Braddock's going to take that with him. At the end of this turn, the militia need to withdraw from the map, and so he might as well use them in the battle. Otherwise, he's not getting really any value out of it. So Braddock, his movement is going to be equal to the slowest unit in this entire stack. We're going to leave behind this battalion, this Indian County, maybe. I'm not really sure the history behind this unit. It's a 1-step unit. We're going to leave it behind to keep the fort there. We're going to take the militia with us. Braddock has 20 movement points, and so we're just going to follow. So this is a road here, but road use the other terrain in the hex. Wilderness is 5 points. So we go 5, 10 through here, and we probably, in order to maintain supply, we are that's a good point. In winter, we'll take attrition if we don't take this. That's interesting. I may rethink this during fall. So during the winter phase, you need to be able to trace down a river back to a supply source. And it's looking like we won't be able to do that this turn. So perhaps this attack is not the way that we want to be doing it right now. We might want to hold him off until next turn. Okay, just double checked in the rules. We can use roads for supply. So if Braddock attacks from here, he'll be okay, or here, he'll be okay. So let's do this properly. So we go 5 to here. Let's go to Fort Bedford, I guess. It looks like this road is not built until 1758. So yeah, we got to go this way. 5, 10, 15 to here. Now we could, if we wanted to, spend another 5 movement points to move into this hex. But in order to attack, we would have to spend an additional 5 movement points. So you spend 5 movement points in this game to attack. So here's what we've got right now. And so we don't have enough movement points. We could move into the hex, and we're allowed to do that because these hexes are really large, and this French force is under a fortification marker, meaning they're in sort of like a hex within the hex. They're in this fort. So this game has a concept of a hex within a hex, and so these French units are actually within this outpost here. I know it's hard to see in the red, but they are located inside the fort. So if Braddock wanted to, he could try and move in to the hex, and then they would coexist basically inside that outpost. But as it stands, I think the French want to try and intercept as soon as Braddock moves into this hex here. Now they would have to roll a 2 or less, I believe, yeah, because they don't have a leader. I guess they don't have the historic leader. I forget his name. He was a Frenchman, but he commanded all these Native Americans to ambush. So we're going to try. We need to roll a 2 or less to try and... Actually, it's going to be a 1 because we have no cavalry. So if we can roll a 1, we can intercept. We did not. So no interception takes place there. And so we're going to stay inside the fortification. So next turn... So actually now Braddock could potentially move into the fort, essentially, and co-locate there, I believe. And once he does that, we could try another interception out from the fortification to ambush. Let's just do it. Let's just stack him up there on top of the fort. And I believe that does not count as a battle. We're allowed to move through and we're allowed to trace supply out and all of that good stuff. Okay, and so we'll try the interception again. We need a 1, and we don't get it. So yeah. Okay, so reading the rules again. If you do move into a hex where a unit is in a town or fortified area, you can initiate combat if you would like. And I think Braddock is going to do it because he's got the Virginia militia with him. He might as well. So we're going to go to a combat, and I will show you how this is going to work. Here is all of Braddock's units. He's got 2 regiments of British regulars, one of whom is Irish. He has got a regiment, the 1st Virginia Regiment of Provincials. That's George Washington. And he's got the Virginia Militia with him. Now, under this fortification, we've got many Native Americans and a French light infantry battalion. Because there was no successful interception, Braddock was able to walk right up to the fort, just as the British had actually planned. And we are going to have a combat here. All right, yeah, this is gonna go pretty well for the British here. You'll notice that the Indians, the Native Americans, have no combat factors, and we've only got 1 combat factor here, which is pretty bad. For the British, the ones in the black box are halved, so we're gonna have 5.5, 9.5, 19.5 to 1. We're gonna be on the maximum column here, but there is gonna be a -1 to the die roll because we are attacking a fortress. The British laying siege to this fortress. So we skip ambush because it didn't work, and we go straight to the combat results table. We are on the 4 to 1 column. 4 to 1 column. The leader, so Braddock is kind of a terrible leader. He doesn't have any bonuses. He has a 0. And it's a -1 because of the fortress there. So here we go. It's probably going to go well for the British. And we rolled a 4. That turns into a 3. That is going to be a 1-2 DR. So 1 step loss to the attacker. And they're not allowed to use militia to take those step losses. And so they'll probably take it to the provincial here, actually. Yeah, why spend it? All right, we'll take it to the provincial there. And then 2 step losses now to the French. Well, they only have 1 to lose here. This one, he's eliminated. And then all of these Native Americans are just gone. Once they are involved in a combat, Native Americans just kind of disappear. Fortification's gone too, I believe, although I'd have to check to see if the British capture it. But all in all, a pretty good result for the British here. Way better than historically went. Braddock successfully captures the fort. And suddenly, the southern flank of the French army is not looking so hot right now. The other thing we have to do is, because the British stack suffered a loss, we have to see if Braddock actually is wounded in the fight. So we roll a die. If we roll a 1... All right, well, if we roll a 1, then we have to roll again to see what happens to him. We rolled a 1, and so maybe this is going a little more historically than I thought. 1 to 2, he's dead. 3 to 4, he's wounded. And 5 to 6 is he's captured. And what did we roll? We rolled a 2. Okay, well, it's a little bit of a Pyrrhic victory. So Braddock, historically, he was ambushed and killed in the fight. In this case, he succeeded at his mission, taking Fort Duquesne, but he was killed in the battle. So I guess there were some sharpshooters in this French regiment, or this French battalion here. Who knows, right? Okay, well, Braddock is dead. That's how that goes. Pretty hilarious that we got a little bit of history in that one. One other thing that I'm a little unclear about here is what happens to this fort. The rules don't actually say what happens. What the rules say is that you can build a fort, obviously, on your initiative turn. It also says that if there are no units under a fort, then it's disappeared. In this case, there was a French fort here. Once all the units are eliminated, there are no units under that fortification. I assume it goes away, and the British would have to rebuild it. This would track more thematically to what happened historically. When they would lay siege to a fort, they would pound it with guns and a siege Siege works, and then they would be damaged, they would win, and then they would take the fort and have to rebuild it. So I'm going to play that way. It seems to be tracking that is what is, but it's not overtly said in the rules that is what is meant. But in this case, we've captured this space. That's going to help us out with our Indian Native American roles every turn. It's a huge opening now to the Great Lakes region for the British. They can come up this way. They can travel all along these shorelines. They've essentially... The British historically wanted this. They wanted to take control of sort of the southern part of the Great Lakes region and really hem the French in Canada, and they've achieved that here really early in the game on turn 3. All right, well, on the French turn, over here, Dieskau is just waiting out the militia withdrawal here, and then he's going to make the attack onto the fort. There's no reason to attack now, but there's going to lose a significant number of strength points here at this fort. And in winter, he'll make the attack and try and take it, especially because there needs to be an answer for losing Fort Duquesne way down there. Unfortunately, the Native Americans for the French have failed to activate again. They've been trying to... I actually haven't checked him yet, but they're trying to get into a position to try and... this guy's trying to reinforce his fortification. The British now, for 4 straight turns, have failed to get this stack to attack. There's a lonely French battalion here blocking the entrance into Upper Quebec, and... they just haven't been able to get an activation. The French have taken a significant portion of their defenses at Louisbourg because there's not really going to be any fleet arrivals in the next couple of turns. And so they're going to make a daring move. They've moved down the coast here. They successfully rolled initiative a second time to ferry across here. And now they are in this little inlet here in sort of the Nova Scotia area, and they're going to try and harass the British rear lines. We've got some pretty weak British units, and especially the port at Halifax here, which is going to soon be undefended because this Nova Scotia militia is going to have to be removed. If the French can take the port at Halifax, that will cut supply to basically the entire British naval seaboard, or ocean seaboard, because in order to trace ocean supply, they have to control Halifax. So the French are going to get aggressive, and they're going to try and counterstroke here against the British supply base in Halifax, Nova Scotia. French turn is over, and so now I'm going to withdraw all the militia. In fact, I can show you what's going to happen here. So militia in the fall turn are removed from the map. That one gets removed. That one gets removed. That is a provincial unit. I believe there's some militia under here. That's a provincial unit. Yeah, so we're just waiting. So these provincial units with the E, they get removed in the second winter turn. So in 2 turns' time, and that's why Dieskau is just hanging out here. He's not going to make a move until those guys have to be pulled back, and there's really nothing the British can do about that. These militia are going to go back to the militia pile. This Nova Scotia militia, as I mentioned here, fall turn gets withdrawn. So every fall and spring, militia are pulled from the map. They're pretty easy to replace. You can replace them next turn. But it does create a little bit of a situation where there might be a hole in the line as they have to go tend to their fields. I don't think that the French have any militia in this scenario. Doesn't look like it. I don't think they have any E units either. It's mostly regulars on the French side. So yeah, pretty good. Got a militia down here. Yeah, that's a provincial. So yeah, militia go back to the box. So it's not probably going to make a huge difference. Oh, there might be a militia under here. No, that's Washington. This is 1st Virginia. Okay. Militia here, no. All right, we are all done. We're heading into turn 4. It's the first turn of winter. Probably no activations in winter. Every leader has their initiative reduced by 2. So, for example, you need to roll a 1 for Dieskau now to get him to move. Well, if Braddock was still in the game, he would need a 1. So not a lot of activity happening. And in general, not a lot of activity happening on any given turn. Usually I'm activating 1 stack or thereabouts, and that's about it. Sometimes no stacks. So it's moving pretty quickly, even though I'm checking in fairly frequently. And I'm going to stop checking in so frequently now that you kind of get a sense of what's happening. I still haven't shown you ambush combat. I'll show you when that happens. But you've seen regular combat, which is an odds table, which is here. So if you remember, I rolled a 3 on 4 to 1. So that was the result, 1-2 DR. Anyways, on we go into 1756.